Sorry, I had to laugh.
That popped out like legit crazy. Like we were just kind of standing there, like, huh? Did it work? Are we live?
We are live.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, how you doing out there? This is your boy Rico, your Chic of Geek. This is my man's Max Prime. You know him from the interwebs, and you know what we're talking about is all some kind of geek stuff. We haven't done this in, I don't even remember the last time, man. How you been?
Been all right, man. Been all right, hanging in there. Yeah, it's been a while.
Oh my, it's been like millennia. Like in geek time, it's been like ridiculous. Like I'm surprised we know each other anymore. Just saying. We probably, if this was like a comic book time frame, we would have been like 60 panels deep and like somewhere in the alternate universe or something.
Exactly.
So what's going on? I mean, I see that your wonderful background and puts my bootleg background to shame because I just threw this together real quick. So I thought I'd share that with everybody in case they're wondering if you're the Chic of Geek, what's with the low production cost back here? So just saying.
This is the wall of DC, a bunch of DC stuff, except for I was pointing out earlier to Rico when we got together, the the Super Shredder over here. I'm very proud of him.
You should be. You should be. But you were also mentioning for our viewers out there, it actually has a double meaning in that. Tell me what's the big sneak back end version of it that you like so much about it?
So, when people tend not to realize about Super Shredder and, from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the movie, the cool thing about the Super Shredder was that the character was played by wrestler Kevin Nash from, of course, WCW, WWE.
/ Diesel.
Hall of Famer, NWO member. And
/
it's just
Big Daddy Cool.
Yes. And it's a joke that, whenever you get or just refer to Super Shredder, you kind of forget that, right, he was played by Kevin Nash. So got the Kevin Nash figure.
You know what? Since we're doing this, I'm just going to break script here because we kind of had a generic idea what we're going to talk about today. Let's talk about that really, really quick. Best Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie.
Oh, I'm going to probably say the first movie, honestly.
First one?
The very first one. Just because I kind of lost interest in, like, once they started to hit, like, the third movie, and then that was done for me. Like,
yeah, I mean, I think that I kind of agree on that, only because of the fact that at the point they started trying to make with technology, try to make it even look, oh, these are real turtles. Yeah. The first one, you were just looking at, yeah, we know these guys are in rubber suits. We get it. It's cool. Corey Feldman's Donatello. I get it. I'm still going to be sitting there. I'm not expecting them to be like, a real thing, but it was just real enough to be put on the screen. Whereas now they just try to put up, yeah, let's just see how crazy and cool we can make them and make them hardcore and remix of the remix of the remix later. I'm like, yeah, I'm done.
Yeah, I think, wasn't it like once it get to, like, was it Turtles in Time?
The third one or the second? Wait, which was the second one?
Was it the fourth? Okay, the second one was the
Turtles in Time was the third one, right?
Yeah, I think so. And
when it went back to feudal Japan for some reason.
Secret of the Ooze was part 2, I think. Yeah.
Isn't that basically like the plot of Batman Ninja?
Yes, exactly.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Just saying. Okay. I did enjoy Batman Ninja better, but whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, looking back at that, I just think that, I mean, the concept was pretty cool. I always lament the fact that I actually had the original black and white Eastman Laird Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #1 comic book at one point. Man. I actually took it to school, and it was missing a few hours later, which if I ever find that person, I will actually put a bounty out on that person. Just throw it out there right now. That would be worth a mint. But I'm not bitter much, right? So going back to what we were talking about, again, we have not talked about stuff on camera or anything really in I don't know how long. I mean, it's got to be years now, right?
Exactly.
I mean, I don't even know how many years. I mean, life gets in the way, as it were. I've been doing my own thing with Geek Warz. So if you know anything about me, you can also look me up on Facebook and Instagram. It's Geek Warz with a WARZ at the end. Max Prime, you've been just doing your thing for DC as a DC insider. You've also been doing your own reviews online on Max Prime Reviews. So you can always check my man out on YouTube. So at this point, we figured it was just time to put something together, do a little quick collabo as you're throwing up, Ninja Turtles 3.
I just had to put it up there.
I look at it. I'm just kind of like not sure what to say about it. I'm like, yeah. It's kind of like when you get to the Fast Furious franchise, you're like, yeah, they should have stopped at 5. And yeah, that's pretty much where I am with that.
Yeah.
All right. Now, if you know anything about Max Prime and myself, we have a wide range of geekery, right? We talk about comics, wrestling, obviously Turtles, go figure, action figures. We don't always agree, and a lot of times we just don't because that's who we are. Today, I thought we'd just break the ice and just say, let's talk about the current state of wrestling. Go figure. Professional wrestling as it is at its best right now. I think anybody out there who's paying attention could probably agree that we're kind of in a the past year or so, wrestling renaissance. Would that be fair to say?
That would be fair to say. Yeah.
Because really, I mean, the collabo has always been, okay, we got WWE over here and maybe a couple of guys down here. Like the B leagues or whatever you want to call them, the B federations or organizations. But now with the advent of big stars moving to other places and moving around, and especially with WWE releasing people and not just re-signing them, giving smaller companies opportunities to flourish. So let's just jump right in. Just ask you this question. What do you think was the biggest move in the past year as far as shifting the balance, basically making it an even playing field? Maybe it was somebody who moved from one location to another, or maybe a company made a certain kind of move or whatever. What was the biggest move that you can see this past year?
I think, well, before I say the obvious one, which I think like most wrestling fans would probably expect me to say, I won't say that one first, but what I will say first is probably, I'll start small, I guess, because remember, because this was kind of like it was a buildup of I would call it the shifting of the scales, and
Okay.
I feel like what started the tipping of the scales to me might have been the very first arrivals of WWE stars into AEW. I'm gonna go with like either Aleister Black or Miro, which is surprising. I know what everybody was expecting me to say because I was gonna say, but like no, I'm holding that but
I am surprised
because that I think like was a good transition for not only them but first of all the WWE fans that followed like Aleister Black, and which was Miro or anyway, so
God's favorite warrior, whatever you want to call him.
Rusev.
Lana's husband, whatever.
So fans of who are used to seeing Rusev and Aleister Black like all the time, constantly, on WWE programming, and then all of a sudden they're in AEW. I think that kind of started the right trend for at least AEW, because then people who were tuning in AEW were now expecting more WWE people to show up, and I felt like that was just kind of like the door being broke open, or you could say the dam bursting, and they were the first arrivals, and then that just led to, of course, which I'm curious to hear what you're going to say with the what you think was the
If you know me, I'm going to go opposite, right? I'm going to go in a totally different direction. Don't get me wrong, I still think AEW was the linchpin, because of the fact that they got just keep it real. They got all that money, that con money, basically. Con, K-H-A-N, not C-O-N. It's con money, the Con family money. That could rival billionaire, Vince McMahon, good old Vinnie Mac. But I'm looking at it from the opposite side of it. You're talking about an exodus from WWE to AEW. I'm looking at it from a collaboration, whereas AEW was continuing a collaboration with other organizations, promotions, as well. I'm looking specifically, and you're going to probably laugh because you know where I'm going with this probably, and you'll probably laugh after I say it, Impact Wrestling. And AEW had the collabo.
Yeah, okay.
So what happened was, in case for those of you who are uninitiated, don't know what we're talking about, is the past year they actually had a open door policy to a certain extent where they would allow members from each organization to pretty much just show up on each other's shows and just basically do what they got to do to promote storylines. At one time, Kenny Omega, who's AEW champion up until a couple of days ago, sorry, it's too soon, but he actually came over and won the title. So he was the Mr. Belt Collector, going from federation promotion to promotion, just going to everything. So I like the fact that I think it felt more Bullet Club centric. If you can tell me if you agree with that. I mean, they were going back and forth between AEW, Impact Wrestling, NWA, you know what I mean? New Japan Pro Wrestling. And they're still kind of doing it to a certain extent, but not in a formal way. But I mean, there's been more of an open door policy among everyone who's basically not WWE, which I don't think we've seen it this way. And I don't remember if we ever seen this before. You know, they keep saying it on TV. It's a great time to be a wrestling fan. Well, be damn right. We can see somebody from New Japan on an AEW show. We can see somebody from an AEW show on an Impact show. You know what I mean? I mean, the Good Brothers seem like they float back and forth pretty much freely between Impact Wrestling with their Impact Wrestling Championship belts, mind you, over to AEW and vice versa.
Well, that's where I totally forgot about that partnership, because yes, that was yeah, I would say yeah, that because like when that first happened, when I seen like Impact, the Good Brothers, the potential your reintroduction of the former, you know, the Bullet Club and everything, yeah, that I would say that was also defining. Yeah,
I mean, unfortunately, this whole thing with Sammy Guevara, who he was supposed to be coming to Impact, and he didn't agree with some of the things they had planned for him, and they kind of botched it a little bit. But but I thought the fact that you could actually, for the first time in you can see freely people just crossing a border, so to speak, and going from one promotion to the other, saying, "Hey, that's all cool. We actually acknowledge that there's a world champion over there." And yeah, we have a women's champion over here, and yeah, they can freely come back and forth. And hey, once in a while, we can challenge each other, see what happens. And it's not something that's part of an invasion angle. It's just individual wrestlers saying, I want to challenge that guy, or I want to set up a dream match with this guy.
That was like when New Japan. See, I think like I feel like New Japan. I feel like those guys like in the elite had a plan on this earlier to see what even before like AEW was created, because I remember when they were in New Japan and every once in a while they would partner with like Ring of Honor, and they bring Ring of Honor guys into like New Japan. And of course, no one was really kind of paying attention to it unless you were like a super diehard wrestling fan who watched like New Japan Pro Wrestling to catch those little nuances of like, oh, the Bullet Club show up into Ring of Honor and jump a bunch of people. Oh, like Ring of Honor guys show up in New Japan. And it was the perfect for them fans. They loved it. They absolutely like love the fact that like, all of a sudden Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks show up in a Ring of Honor ring, and obviously don't do Ring of Honor things as they're like, jumping people and things like that.
Right.
And so that moment was probably, like the casual TV person was probably like, what is happening here? Who are these guys? Impact Wrestling, and
I mean, right now you're seeing when I go back to the Bullet Club seems like it's almost like a resurgence. Like they're leading the charge to be on every show. Yeah. Pretty much. I can't picture a show that there's not either a current or former Bullet Club member on it.
Exactly.
I mean, that's whether you're talking about MLW, whether you're talking about WWE, you can see people there still flashing up the Too Sweet over there. So, I mean, and plus, it's really kind of a cool thing where you're all of a sudden being exposed to, like, for example, some of the Bullet Club members I'm not as familiar with, like who are from New Japan, who are all of a sudden showing up in Impact, which I try to watch every week when I can. Yeah. And it's like, oh, that guy's kind of cool. I mean, the Switchblade's over here. Oh, cool. What I mean? Yeah. I'm like, I see all these other guys who I wouldn't even thought to like even say, oh, he could be cruiserweight champion, or he could be, TNT champion, or whatever is coming up on AEW or something like that. So it's been really a resurgent thing. That, to me, that was what we're talking about when we're talking about impact, no pun intended, impact moves in the wrestling business, something that made a big mark with me.
So that being said, to counter those two things, like the WWE guys showing up, the Impact partnership, What about the I would say the next to greatest thing that occurred this year, which I would say tipping the scales, the impact. I'm going to say his name because he's the best in the world. CM Punk. Even though he was out doing his own thing, he has solidified himself as the household name of not a WWE guy, but just a wrestler, famous wrestler in general. Because his name just speaks for itself at this point. So,
okay,
would that you say another impact move which tipped the scales?
I don't know if it tipped the scales, and I'm gonna give you free form on this one because you're obviously a much bigger CM Punk fan than I was. Only because I was kind of souring on the product around that time frame before he kind of did dropped the old pipe bomb, as it were, as it's famously known around the world, right?
Yeah.
And I was always like, oh, okay, he's cool. But he seems to have not say transcended wrestling, but I think his name has gotten so big that he's known, his aura, his reputation is known people who are all around the world. So him showing up now though in AEW, I don't know. You could argue that maybe Bryan Danielson, as he is now known as, might be, you can consider that probably a more impactful appearance because he's still been active. Mm-hmm. It's almost like, I don't want to call him nostalgia because that's kind of not the word I'm looking for, but it's almost like he can pretty much choose when he wrestles. I'd say at this point it appears. I don't know. I still think it's kind of cool he showed up. I liked his merch. I ain't gonna lie. I saw some guy at the grocery store when he first came up with this. Literally the next day had the exact same T-shirt. I thought it was kind of cool. So it's not just me. But I don't know. I mean, I think it's impactful from the point of view of an iconic type name.
Okay.
Showed up. As far as the actual wrestling concerns, I don't know if you can kind of argue either way, I guess.
I mean, do you feel like he's really just used as a marketing ad piece to just bring in more of the WWE side of things, since technically, the nostalgia piece would have been similar if you would have gotten like Booker T or, like a legendary WWE because Hall of Famer in that age range, just to kind of draw in more people to the AEW product.
Here's what I look at it. When you're selling anything, right? Just a generic marketing type thing, right? There's the steak and there's the sizzle. At this stage of his career, I would say if you're looking at it weighted, slightly more on sizzle as opposed to steak right now. Because I think what he's trying to do right now is what Bryan Danielson is doing to a certain extent, in that he's trying to AEW is, I think, marketing dream matches. If you kind of get where I'm going,
yeah.
Like all of a sudden he's trying to go against the quote unquote new guys. Like all of a sudden he had to come out and call out Darby Allin, for example.
Yeah.
Have a big match against him. He's doing all kind of little things, calling out some of the guys who are of this newer generation, and so saying, hey, I heard you got a big name, so I guess we're gonna have to meet up at some point. So it's sizzle and steak, but I think it kind of weighs on the fanboy thing about like, let's put these dream matches together as if it's a video game and I can create my own character and fight, that we can finally do that in WWE we never could do.
Yeah. So
if that's fair, I think
So I mean, like, and also, okay, so if let's say tipping again, the impact, I call it tipping the scales. So Bryan Danielson, also another, just a bunch of other, like, what was her name? What's her Ruby Riot when she showed up too?
Yeah.
Do you think that, like, okay, so Daniel Bryan, Ruby Riot, you have Miro, you have Aleister Black, all
the WWE formerly known as.
So is it enough now that CM Punk, the icon, I call him the icon, Daniel Bryan?
Don't tell Sting that. Who is, by the way, also in AEW. Go ahead.
Yeah, Big Show, Mark Henry, all these like WWE household names now appearing, and then potentially maybe Bray Wyatt, the Fiend,
right?
Eventually showing up. So all those combinations of things, I think, for me, that's my opinion. Like I think like all the, even including yours, the partnership, the WWE invasion, CM Punk's arrival, I think like that kind of tipped the scales. And I'm curious, like, about what your thoughts about the other side of the scale, the losing end. I wouldn't say like losing end, but you know what I'm about to say, like the WWE.
I'm going to say it this way. For a while there, and we talked about this a long time ago, how for a while I just stopped watching because it felt like really redundant and stale for a while.
I think everybody's
I'm thinking right now it's just that they are no longer a big fish in a small pond anymore. That's the way I'm kind of looking at it. I feel like they've got a lot going on. They've got a lot business-wise. You can't really mess with the marketing from them. They're just top of the line. You know what I mean? They're the role model. They're the ones that did it first. They multiple networks and going through European tours and all that other jazz, right? To expand the market, expand their brand. You can't mess with it. Yeah. Everyone knows WWE.
Yeah.
Now, with the advent of the internet, different channels, different promotions, and different, for lack of a better way of saying it, hype marketing. Now a lot more people know about AEW. Twitter will explode if it doesn't give me some kind of AEW or Impact Wrestling update today. That's not an exaggeration. I'm being serious. It does that every single day. So there's other options and alternatives. So not everybody wants to do the mainstream stuff for whatever reason, but I think it's just that the concept of it, instead of being the 500-pound gorilla in the living room, just kind of staying there and watching what everybody else is doing, saying, you're never going to touch this. The goal is to always come here. Everyone has new goals now. They don't have to go to WWE to make their name and to make their bones. Yeah. They can. I mean, if you're trying to get there, if you want to live, as HBK says, the childhood dream, whatever, the boyhood dream, whatever, being champs or whatever. But you don't have to do it. So I think it's basically a different dynamic right now where everybody has their own way of looking at it. It's a menagerie of different tastes and things like that. They have their own way of doing it. I mean, I love it. At first, I liked what they did with NXT because that was actually almost like the minor leagues, almost like a separate thing from WWE in a certain extent. It's kind of been more tied in now, so with homegrown talent and things like that. But I don't know. The way I look at WWE right now is, okay, they're kind of like the originators of how we perceive wrestling right now, but AEW, Impact are more like the innovators of what wrestling should be right now.
I feel like what's a brand of like food, like I compare it to food, but like what's a brand of like fast food that like everybody used to eat all the time, but now that the company's so big, their food is garbage and people still eat it anyway, just because it's just readily, easily available. And what was that like?
Well, it's like when people were like, used to go when you're a kid, you're thinking, you know what? I will throw a holy fit if you don't get me a Happy Meal at McDonald's this week.
Yeah.
Now we're like, I think I'm good going to Chick-fil-A if I can get in that line.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And that's not saying anything necessarily is altogether terrible about McDonald's, because whatever, they've been around forever, but it's not the only choice. It's kind of like the new version of what I can do. I have a choice now. So it's not one size fits all. And even though you probably mastered the way we've done it so far to this point, now we got different ways of going about it.
I think that makes sense. That was always the problem, I think, where everybody's talked about when WWE had so many wrestlers on their roster. What are they going to do with all the amount of wrestlers that they had? Then when WWE became a giant global corporation machine, it seemed like they just didn't care anymore. They felt like, well, there was no other alternatives way before AEW was around. And so they could literally get away with doing anything they wanted to, basically. They don't really care about fan opinions, and they'll just push a product to people. And I felt like, first of all, fans were already every week I remember talking to either like either those other wrestling fans or other people, and the first thing they would always say is like, "Oh, did you watch Raw?" Like, "Nah, man, I don't watch that anymore." That's like the number one response for wrestling fans. Like, I don't watch that anymore. I haven't watched it in a couple months. Why? Because the product is unwatchable, and
it was somewhat redundant at some point.
Exactly. And then now you have all of a sudden AEW, which just again up and just popped up. At first, people were like, "Well, then they're not going to be any competition. No, they're not going to, like they're small. There's no way they could possibly compete." But then when you think about it, how many people are turning off WWE because they didn't like it? It's unwatchable, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, AEW's on. Forgot about that." Click, and that simple decision can really change the scales, change the ball.
It's about the eyes on the product, right? So we're talking about. All right, so okay, I can watch this that I know it's going to happen, and like in 2 weeks, it's probably going to be something very similar. Or I can just see over this. I can see new guys who I've never even heard of before, and females as well. Different storylines and different remix, as it were, of what wrestling as we normally see it is. Like, okay, with more times you're probably going to go for the innovation.
Yeah,
and with like you were saying about basically getting too big at some point, it was almost like we had such a stacked roster where, okay, so you can't really fit everybody in and give them their shine. So it's that whole lost in the shuffle mentality. You know what I mean? It's like you'll get somebody like, I don't know, I'm just making up, like for example, like AJ Styles. AJ Styles, my man from Impact Wrestling, he was Mr. Impact Wrestling for years. And I was telling people for years, yo, this guy Impact Wrestling, AJ Styles. They're like, who the heck is that? He's one of the few people that basically jumped in and from the gate was Mr. Star. But not everybody can do it that way. You know what I mean? So it's like there's few exceptions to the rule where you go in, you got to bust your butt, and you got to do what you got to do in a big mammoth company like that. But it's the cream of the crop rises. But then again, you also got to worry about the politics in the company.
I feel like the WWE, well, with AJ Styles, him being over there, and I feel like now he's just collecting a paycheck like most of those guys over there, which is like they just don't care. They just rather get paid and don't care about character direction or anything. They're just getting the money while they can, especially for I feel like for AJ. But that being said, I'm like, so would you say like the biggest impact for AEW is their successes, and then the biggest impact this year for WWE is their absolute almost like collapse? I wouldn't say collapse, but it seemed like mass exodus, them releasing all these like wrestlers, everybody's attention is on AEW, and then WWE is still just chugging along doing the same. So like,
I think it boils down to how willing each company is to give the public what they want.
Yep.
Okay. Like for example, we'll look at Roman Reigns, top dog, right?
The head of the table.
And I mean, for how many years was everybody saying, let that guy be a heel, right?
Yeah.
And they were like, oh hell no, we're not gonna let that guy. We're gonna let him fight Brock Lesnar 30 times. We're gonna let him, go back and sort of reunite with Seth Rollins, but then eventually they'll turn on each other and they'll fight. No. But all of a sudden they said, you know what? Maybe after, I don't know, 7 or 8 years, it's probably a better idea to, let's see what happens. And I think his character's taken off. Like I said, I don't even watch WWE like that, but from everything I'm seeing, online and the little clips I see here and there, it seems like it's basically working to some extent, right? But on the flip side of it, AEW seems to think about doing that all the time. It's like that's their main. What am I looking for? Is their main mission statement? And as far as how they do it, give them what they want.
What's funny is like for years you always used to tell me back during, even when we used to be all about the comic books and conversations. Rico here would always tell me like, you can't be one-sided. You always gotta like you gotta learn you gotta learn about
look at the big picture.
Yeah, like you can't just like them like one of the main 2 or the main 3 or whatever. He's like you're solely just one side. You gotta broaden your horizons and read other comic books from other companies and things like that. So that being said, that example also that example also applies to WWE, because what I'm about to say is that, like, I feel like I was going to answer you my opinion on the product, because I did try to watch it. I watch all wrestling, so all different companies, and I noticed that sometimes when I say things to like who I thought was a general wrestling fan, like the broad perspective, like all companies under the wrestling name or just umbrella, when I say the product is unwatchable to them, they get offended. Or if I say like, "Oh, did you watch AEW the other day?" They're like, "What? Like, I don't watch that. I'm WWE all the way."
Egads.
If I'm about to offend anybody before I say this, but like, yeah, I feel like my opinion lately, I tried to watch the product, WWE, and it's just unwatchable. I can only watch like 20 minutes and I just turn it off. Oh, it just.
I honestly, on a week-to-week basis, don't know who's holding what title over there anymore.
The only Roman,
and I don't know. And I'm going to say it this way. And again, I'm like trying to bash WWE. Frankly, I'm sure everything's a cycle, and then eventually they'll figure it out, and maybe they'll be good again at some point. Maybe, but I can only live in the now. So all I'm going to say is right now, to be cliche about it, because I'm just going to do it. It is a good time to be a wrestling fan if you're paying attention to the big picture and looking at your alternatives and seeing. You can actually see a whole lot of great stuff if you take a few minutes out of your day and actually take a look at these other guys. And when I say the other guys, they're almost becoming the guys now, because AEW's prime example, Impact Wrestling's prime example, New Japan's prime example. Yes. When you're doing things that are unique to you, and you're also you're playing with the whole fourth wall, as it were. Yeah, people know what's now. You're not insulting people's intelligence by, actually giving that little wink, like, yeah, we know what's going on.
I feel like you mentioned the tribal chief, our head of the table. I feel like, honestly, like I feel like he was the only one left. Like, he's like the only draw, honestly. Like, I can watch him be a heel, which is surprising. Yeah, before, remember, nobody, like you said, nobody could stand him as a baby face, but like, or a face. But now, like, now that he's bad Roman, he's the heel. I can watch that, but that's it. There's nothing else. Like, there's nothing else at all between both.
The shield is gone. Let's get over it. That's over with. You know what I mean? Now move on. Thank you, Paul Heyman, for actually helping him with his presentation. So let's bring that up. I'm going to switch the gears a little bit on you real quick. Okay. Something I noticed also in the past, especially the past couple of years, resurgence of women's wrestling, right? So you're seeing a little bit more presence online. It's not all, pillow fights and lingerie matches and all that jazz, like like in the Attitude Era of wrestling back in the day. Who do you think has the best women's wrestling?
Oh man.
Now.
Oh man, I would put it like I was actually I was wondering where you're going. I thought you were going to go in this direction because I was going to mention something about two particular women wrestlers in WWE, which I'm probably going to mention a little bit, but
go for it. It is an open forum. You know this, right?
I'm probably going to say, like, I want to say AEW, just for the fact that since they're brand new, they haven't really, I would say, screwed with the women's wrestling as much as WWE has screwed with the women's division, how they handled the titles, how they change hands, the whole process. So you know what I'm gonna say in a little bit, but I feel like AEW, when AEW began, they're handling their women wrestlers just like how they handle their men wrestlers. Everybody has a 0-0-0 record, clean slate. They're wrestling every night. They're not like kind of like putting them in a little box, which I felt like WWE did for a long time, even after Stephanie McMahon's speech about women's revolution. And they were supposed to have this revolution, and then all of a sudden it went right back kind of like to the way it was. And then you have a couple weird events in WWE, which I want to say the whole with Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair, which have you heard this controversy thing going on especially with Becky Lynch, especially with the last SummerSlam?
Was it like they were supposed to exchange belts or something?
So
because they got traded to opposite shows, and they're like, oh, here. Oh, by the way, you again. We fought before.
So let me fill you in quickly. So let me fill Rico
Go
in.
for it.
Becky Lynch, remember, Becky Lynch had just had a baby. The man had a baby. Kind
of sounded weird. That kind of sounds funny, but yes, I understood it.
So she was out for a very long time. She eventually makes her debut back to WWE at SummerSlam. And at the current time, Bianca Belair? Yeah, she was the champ. And
yeah, I saw that.
She got squashed in like 10 squashed in 10 seconds. So people were already kind of upset about that. Like, really?
I mean, she just had a baby too. Like, I'm talking about like maybe 2-3 months earlier, something like that.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure she had the baby monitor out back, like in gorilla position, probably. You know what I'm saying? Just kind of like, yo, check her out. Just roll her over real quick. Probably have Natty in the back burping the baby or something. Go ahead.
So she squashes Bianca in 10 seconds, becomes a champion again. Becky's the world champ. Charlotte Flair ends up becoming world champ on her particular show. So now you have Becky and Charlotte once again champions and everything. So what ends up happening, Rico, is that they had the Raw draft thing. Again, WWE has their, yearly draft where stars from SmackDown and stars from Raw switch over, crossover, they get drafted and traded or whatever.
Basically their version of, let's see if we can shake up the roster and change it up a little bit for a year.
So what ends up happening is apparently, like, actually, let me plug in my laptop before we die. That's not good. Hold on. So,
true story.
Apparently, Becky and Charlotte have real heat with each other. Like, they really don't like each other in real life. Like, they can't stand each other. They're not.
I heard something about that. Yeah.
They don't interact. They just, like, do their job. They do not talk to each other. They just, yeah. So of course, whoever the writer is in the back had this genius idea, because Charlotte was going to go from Raw to SmackDown. Becky goes from SmackDown to Raw. They figured, like, well, since they're going and, across brands, one is holding the red belt, one is holding the blue belt. We have to have them switch belts and stuff because it doesn't make sense. Why have a blue belt on the red show, vice versa? The segment was supposed to be that Charlotte and Becky were in the ring. Charlotte is supposed to give the belts to Becky. Right. And Becky, I don't know who wrote this in the script, but Becky was supposed to take her belt and then her own and then hold it up, both of them up, because of the whole Becky two belts thing.
Becky two belts. Yeah.
So so when Becky went to go and grab Charlotte's belt, Charlotte grabs the belt, her own, and then just drops it on the ground in front of her and tells her to pick it up.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Off script, was not scripted, and you could immediately see even the announcers went quiet. They were like,
Cricket. Was that supposed to happen? Guys?
So Sonya Deville is in the ring, and of course she sees what's going on, and she's like, pick up the belt. Pick up the belt. You can just see pick up the belt now. So of course Charlotte picks it up, and then I think she throws the belt at Becky, and then they're like, wow. Okay, Becky, give her the, your belt or whatever. And so Becky throws it right into Charlotte's chest, her belt and stuff. And for a split second, they're about to fight. You could feel the real tension.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, I believe it was Sasha Banks comes out because her music hits, and that kind of eases everything up. But apparently backstage later, they got into a real fight where security was called on Charlotte, and they escorted Charlotte out of the building. Yeah. But yeah, so I want to tell you that. But overall, I felt like the women's division, because of those two, I feel like most people, yes, they don't like Charlotte, and I feel like most people are love Becky, but at the same time, I don't really their women's division isn't really, to me, said, as I would say, fair and an actual real wrestling like AEW is, versus that mess. That mess over there in WWE with Charlotte and Becky, it seems like it'll always be Charlotte and Becky. They're the main two. They're the, the Austin Rock, the Hogan Flair of,
They're the dependable go-tos.
Yeah.
Basically, we got nothing going on. Becky, Charlotte. Yeah, that works. Exactly. People like them or hate them, depending on the day. But yeah, they love him. My answer to that question is AEW's women's division has gotten a lot better. I'll say it that over the past year and a half. Yeah, I mean Nyla Rose. I mean she is a beast. I mean as her moniker goes, right?
It's hard.
Sheeta, Shida was a great champion. I thought she made a lot of strides as far as presentation wise too. She was always a good athlete, but as far as her interviews and presentation and everything, I thought she did a lot of strides there. Ty Conti, another former WWE. I really dig her. She's been doing a lot of good things lately. I'll say this much. They've gotten a lot of strides. I think it's tied between them and Impact. I think Impact's a little underrated in that fact.
Where's Tessa?
Honestly, honestly, I'm gonna give AEW a slight edge on that one. Only because if there's an A, Impact's an A-. Only because of the fact that the mainstays in the Knockouts division, as they call it in Impact Wrestling, you got Rosemary, you got Havoc. I mean, you got all kind of people. You got Tasha Steeles. I think has been a really cool addition to that division. Up until recently, you have and a couple people there that went over to AEW, for example. So, so I'm just thinking that they've done with it feels like a smaller roster. They've done a lot of good things as far as match wise. I mean, Mickie James just came back. Yeah. All kind of people going up, and we have Jazz back there. ODB showed up out of nowhere for a little bit, I guess promoting her food truck, whatever. So she was there doing all kind of things. I think it's an underrated thing. So I'm just saying, I'm going to agree with you. Bottom line, AEW I think has a slight edge over Impact for the women's division, but it's only because I think they just have a wider roster as well.
I think because I was going to say with what that leads us back to the AEW problem. Well, maybe leads us into another topic, but it's just for the fact that if a casual wrestling fan who was only watching WWE, that's the only issue. That if someone is used to one brand, and then when they first tune into AEW for the first time, the first thing out of their mouth they probably would say is who is this person in the ring? Who is this jungle boy? Who is this? Or
yeah, that's or Perry's son. That's the guy's from 90210's son.
So it's who is this female wrestler that I never heard of, and are they good enough in general to gain that person's attention to say, oh wow, whoever that person is a really great entertainer or wrestler or whatever. And that's what my next question for you to throw it back at you is do you think that's AEW's biggest problem in general, just moving away from women? Do you think AEW in general, the biggest problem is that the only way they can kind of draw in is by continuously signing other big household names, because the indie talent that they have is not good enough to hold, not good enough to bring in more viewership, or
you're concerned about the name brand recognition.
Yeah, as far as for people would tune in to, if they just stumbled across AEW's channel and they seen Dean Ambrose in the ring, or AKA John Moxley, they're gonna be like, oh yeah, I remember him. That's a Shield guy. But then when they see a guy like Kenny Omega, they're gonna be like, who's this guy? Who's this guy?
I think Kenny Omega is one of those guys. I think he's known by wrestling fans, not wrestling fans. Casual guys off the street. People know about the name Kenny Omega. So I don't know if that's their weakness per se. I just think that they're high on promoting newer talent, which is why, if you notice, for example, the Young Bucks, they didn't get the championship, they didn't get a title, or not even Kenny Omega in their first year. Yeah, they were in a lot of good bouts for the title or in title tournaments and things like that. They've done, and they were putting up a lot of great matches, but it was usually against newer / younger talent. So it's kind of like Private Party, for example.
Yeah.
I can't believe they're lost in my opinion, lost in a shuffle in the Hardy family office, whatever they want to call it over there, that organization, because they were doing so great by themselves. They're young talent. Definitely, I mean, they have a win that early in their career at AEW, they had like basically all kind of wins over the Young Bucks. For example, Lucha Brothers, you know what I mean? There's all kind of people that do, especially with talent-wise when it comes to tag team wrestling, which I felt that they were basically building the company around for a minute there. But also, I just think at this point in the game, they're just focusing on distributing the wealth. Like we used the example earlier about CM Punk. What did he first do? He's calling out some of the newer talent he's not as familiar with. When they brought back Sting, Sting really wasn't there to make a run at a title. He still isn't. He's there basically to mentor Darby Allin. You know what I mean? So I mean, yeah, did he get in a couple matches? Sure, but he's not coming out full time. You know what I'm saying? So, I'm thinking that, you know, in that perspective, to answer your question, I don't think they're really their weakness is that, as far as that's concerned. I think some in general, I mean, they're still in their infant stages. If you really break it down, they've been around 2 years.
Yeah.
So, you know, WWE in whatever form, WWE/WWF has been around for decades. Impact Wrestling has been around, I don't know, what, a dozen years or so, give or take, maybe give or maybe a little bit more than that. And before they were Impact, you know, obviously they were, you know, TNA.
Well, they're probably almost a decade also. Well, no.
Yeah, it's got to be around a decade mark, you know, give or take.
Yeah.
So I mean, and they are banking on talent that nobody knew about for the most part. You know, at that point, I mean, I didn't know who America's Most Wanted was back then. I'm like, but James Storm right now, he's still one of my all-time favorites.
But do you feel like because of Sting being there to be like, you know, helping, do you think like I said, is it a gift and a curse? Is it like kind of hindering them? Because if you bring in a Sting to mentor a young Darby Allin, if you bring like a CM Punk to mentor like a Eddie Kingston, you bring in a John Moxley or a Chris Jericho to help like Sammy Guevara and the other young talent. But then are people going to only draw to those big names that they're used to versus them? I mean, yeah, in a way they are kind of learning like, oh, hey, there's this cowboy guy who, you know, his name is Hangman Page, you know, cowboy shit, you know, and like, you know, they kind of like catch on. They learn about some people who they like, but then versus others that still just more draw to like those big brand names. And then, you know, maybe people are sort of tuning in only to see CM Punk, and then they switch off because as soon as CM Punk is, but in a way that's still good for them, right? Because it's like,
right. Well, I think also depending on who you're dealing with, we'll use Chris Jericho as the best example. He's going out in the past, I don't know, year and a half, especially promoting younger talent.
Yeah.
He's gone on record saying that, hey, I'll work with Marco Stunt any day of the week. I'm like, that little midget guy, that short guy in Jurassic Express that is hard. He was always doing a freaking Fortnite dance or whatever he's doing. I don't know, flossing, whatever. I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, remember when he had a little feud with Orange Cassidy? I mean, he had a feud with him. After that ran its course, you know. Now, how many people you see walking around, you know, screaming "freshly squeezed" now? You know what I mean? And that has nothing to do with Chris Jericho now, because Chris Jericho's been doing all kind of things. Chris Jericho spent the better part of this past year promoting MJF. You know what I mean? And now that they're squashed or they're over with, their battle is over with, he's doing other things, but MJF has taken probably, arguably, the biggest stride as the company's biggest jerk. You know, biggest heel, you can argue. Most hated guy, probably. So I don't know. I think it's just kind of like they use the veterans as a lure, I guess, if that's a good way of saying it, to lure you in and say, hey, look, you remember this guy. Yeah, he's got a feud going with this guy. Well, who's that guy? And if that guy has the moxie and he got the little bit of the talent, you know what I mean? So he's going to end up, you know, being able to sink or swim, as it were.
Makes sense. Because yeah, like I just noticed like it just with all those big names, like, and then even like the announce booth, you have Mark Henry, you have the Big Show. I feel like, man, they're just like they're trying to. I mean, yeah, I know. I think Tony Khan did say like, he wasn't intentionally trying to sign every WWE guy that gets released, but he would only sign people that make sense.
Mm-hmm.
That I guess to help benefit them, but not like,
Right.
oh, my sole purpose is to get every single WWE superstar to then, be, to build up AEW. That wasn't his intention. He was just, if it makes sense, then I guess he'll pick them up.
Well, remember when Paul White, aka Big Show, came in? Do you remember when the Gun Club jumped him? Whatever happened with that? Nothing.
Yep.
I mean, he punched the chair here and there, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, so I haven't seen the Gun Club on TV since.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I mean, they were the weekly mainstays during the pandemic, where they were, hey, we're the cheering section over here. But then when they started allowing people in, they got that little mini angle, and we have I don't know. I haven't seen I haven't seen the Gun Club since then. I haven't seen Paul White since then, really. So I don't know. Like I said, is it distracting at some point? I don't know. I think it just depends on context.
Yeah. Did you hear about Big E becoming champion?
Yes.
What are your thoughts on
I guess it was his turn. Coffee. It was, which I don't know. Depending on who you ask, he kind of got screwed out of that title after he finally got it. But yeah, I'm like, okay. I guess it was Big E's turn at some point.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, that's my other comment about that, is that I feel like them still having two belts the way they do, just like how Charlotte, as back to the Charlotte Becky thing, Charlotte mentioning that the Raw champion or the Smack, which vice versa, like one champion is weaker than the other champion. So while Roman being the champion of SmackDown, now it seems like the Raw holder is like the second champion. I don't know if you remember back when CM Punk was in WWE and CM Punk was the world champ, and there was a moment where at the same time, I believe Sheamus was like, he was holding the world title and CM Punk was the WWE champion around the time he was like engaging with like Alberto Del Rio and right before he fought Chris Jericho. So CM Punk called him like the paper champion, the the second string, basically,
Pretty much.
I would say, like, do you feel like do you think that the two belt thing is necessary? Do you think like it's really makes him look?
I'm like this. I mean, I think because they have two shows, you almost have to do it. What I mean by that is because of the fact, okay, you have 50 stars in your stable. You got to do something with them, right? Mm-hmm. And you can only give title shots to so many people for any given title at any given moment. And you can only have so many title tournaments to determine number one contender, whatever storyline you want to use, right? I mean, you're the big dog federation that, that has 60, 100 million, bazillion people on it. You got to give them a game plan. You got to give them a purpose besides just randomly feuding with people. That's why they have, the top tier and the mid-tier belts on each division. That's why they have women's titles. That's why they have tag team titles. How many times have we seen tag teams thrown together in wrestling?
Unified.
Yep. On paper, you're thinking, what's this about? And they became fire. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. The New Age Outlaws, perfect example, right? Who would have thought those guys who were doing nothing individually, they just threw them together as a team and they became legendary. You know what I mean?
Well, that's my question. Like, do you feel like, remember when in the 90s and like late 90s and early 2000s, I felt like there was more respect behind those belts versus now, where I feel like essentially some belts are just like meaningless. Like, do they even have tag belts anymore? Yeah, they do. They still have the tag belts in wrestling. I was like, they still have them in Raw, like, but nobody really cares about them anymore as much as back then during like, the Outlaws and
see, I don't know if it's so much that they don't respect them. I just think it's presentation. Like, for example, I use the example of AEW when it felt like all they were doing was tag team wrestling. Remember that? Yeah. You know what I mean? And it was basically building up the tag team division. In Impact Wrestling, when good old Bubba Ray was back there and he had a little help, with the backstage stuff, there was a lot more tag team building when he was booking things in the background for them as well, for example. So it's a matter of how often you're putting them out there, how much screen time, how much, I don't want to say reverence, but how much you're actually presenting them and in what light. If you're just saying, well, anybody in every given week is going to be a champion, who cares?
Yeah.
If you're actually building up the title and building up the characters that surround that title, and you're giving them a chance of like, oh, this team can beat anybody in any given day. I mean, this week in Impact Wrestling, we could have Finn Juice win the title.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, I've heard of them. I never really knew too much about them until they showed up in Impact. Then I started watching old clips to kind of get an idea who they were. Great. That was awesome. Good brothers. Geez. It looked like WWE couldn't decide what to do with them. They come at Impact. They got their own shop talk. They got, you know what I mean? They got all kind of things going on. To kind of look at the title things in general, like for example, I see you flashed up the Impact title. Remember back in the day, it was all about the X Division.
Yeah,
the X Division is a staple, and you know, what I mean, I'm thinking right now it's focusing more on traditional world title and tag team titles right now. But the X Division title was back in the day of the focus. That was the bedrock that you built the whole company on. AJ Styles, Christopher Daniels. You mean? Chris Sabin, you can go on and on and on, Petey Williams and everything. Those guys built the division, but the fact that they were actually always on the line, always being presented, always pushed to the front. That's the kind of thing that build a title.
Maybe I feel like I'll more focus it as like, I feel like there's more prestige when it comes to any other wrestling company besides WWE, if that makes sense. I hate to say it.
Tell us how you really feel.
It's like I feel like there's more. You carry yourself. I mean, obviously, but I would say okay, I can't really say it like that. But I mean, it seems like there's more prestige behind like the titles in other companies versus WWE that just change hands whenever they feel like. It just doesn't seem like there's no importance behind it. There's no, like when you were called the Intercontinental Champion back in the day, that meant something. You know what I mean? Remember the Intercontinental title, the IC belt and everything? Now it's like, it's just, I feel like there's no point to having that title anymore. Or
I think that the title is always defined by the champion. Like, for example, I think, and you can tell me if you agree with this, I think that when The Miz had the Intercontinental Champion, you kind of you kind of tended to care more about it, right?
Oh yeah,
because he treated it like it was the biggest title on the show.
He tried. He tried. You know
what I'm saying? He treated it that way. And it came across that way, right?
Yeah.
Like for example, so I don't know. I'm almost kind of thinking that WWE focuses more on the storyline as opposed to the athleticism, the actual competition portion of the entertainment, if that makes sense.
Or like
they were like, okay, we gotta get from point A to point B. So let me build up all this stuff here, and it'll work itself out. I just need to get them to over here. You know what I mean? So we're worrying about, okay, this is what has to happen in storyline, not necessarily caring as much as, okay, there's still some wrestling that has to be done.
Yeah. I just felt like it was such a harder challenge to like obtain a title, and it just wasn't like treated as being like I said, meaningless, or like I said, Miz did a great job. I felt like Miz did a real good job of trying to bring that belt back to life and stuff. Like I feel like
that's like the most immediate example, and that's probably since the last time I say it. So I've been consistently anyway.
That's the last time it's ever been relevant. Like to be honest, I'm thinking about it now. Like the Miz, that was his last attempt to save it, you know. But
I mean, when you saw Dolph Ziggler at least trying for that title for the 50th time, you know what I mean? You kind of cared a little bit more about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. I mean, it kind of delineates itself from the fact that how is it being presented, or is it being shown as a pass along title? You know what I mean?
True.
It's kind of like what's it called, the 24/7 championship.
Oh, geez.
Like, don't get me wrong. I think it's hilarious that what's he called? This guy Ron Killings was the 75th millionth time champion because he just kept winning it and losing it every week. But do you really care about it? Were you going to have a tournament at any point for that? No.
Exactly. You know, that's like it's like creating a belt for any reason. You know, like the what was that belt that they created for the Saudi the
damn it, I can't think what it is.
Didn't Braun Strowman win that belt? It was like the oh man.
Well, they also had the Andre the Giant trophy that kind of went away, it looks like, and all that jazz.
Yeah.
It was just like, what's the point of that?
Yeah.
I mean, you also got to remember they also did things every year. Supposedly, a new King of the Ring is, is crowned, and it's like sometimes people use it, sometimes people don't use the king anymore.
And then what's the purpose of that? Because it's like before it used to mean something. Now it's just like you just get called king for like 6 to 8 months, and then that's it.
You drop it, and you're like, okay, now somebody else's turn.
King Corbin was the last person that I was aware of who used it like all the time, and then now it's King Woods since.
I was saying Xavier Woods, I heard won it.
Yeah.
Like, but I don't know.
What does it mean?
Some things I think WWE just kind of does things because that's what's worked before.
Like I said, it's like the McDonald's example. You go to the drive-thru, you expect to go get a salad. All of a sudden, you realize that McDonald's removes salads from the menu, and you're like, "Oh, I guess they can just do whatever they want." Like that's interesting. Like okay, and people still just eat whatever they're offered if they just are in quick demand to get some food right now, and even though the quality might be.
And the ice cream machine will still not work.
Yes.
Don't understand why.
Yes. Perfect example. The fans want it, but they'll never get it.
Okay. That makes sense. But, again, when it comes down to it, just like anything else in life, it's about your taste, right? So I think go back to the main subject, I don't know, the overall theme, if that's what we want to call it, what we've been talking about for, I don't know, an hour now. Yeah. So it's about one of those things where right now it's a great time to be a wrestling fan, to use that cliche that everyone uses every week, because you got choice now. Before you had to take what WWE fed you, whether you liked it or not, unless you had the access to see things on the internet, see what's going on overseas, see what's going on TNA/Impact, or seeing what's on NWA and things of that nature. So I just think right now it's just you got the most variety of any time in wrestling history.
Exactly. Totally agree. And
how's that for a big synopsis statement?
I say we hit our hour mark. We're at the end.
I don't even know if anybody's still watching this. I gotta tell you, and I gotta tell you, considering the fact that we just kind of off the cuff just started doing all this, is hilarious. I'm in it for no matter what. I'm just doing it. There it is. Good, bad, or indifferent. Max Prime and myself, the Sheik of Geek, we're gonna still do this. I don't care.
Exactly.
If we were a duo, I'm gonna campaign. I'm gonna make the T-shirt. It says Sheik Prime. The amalgam. The fusion. Yes. It worked. Oh my god, that was hilarious. So I don't know if you wanted to talk anything more about it, or this now, or do you want to save like comic book stuff for next time? But I'm doing my thing.
Let's save the comic book stuff for next time, because we're at the hour mark. I mean, yes, maybe potentially there's going to be a part 2 video.
This may be interesting. I may even like invest, in something that looks a little more pleasant to look like in the background as well. You never know. So I guess this is a time where we do shameless plug time. So as you know, my name is Rico. I'm the Sheik of Geek. You can find me on Geek Warz, which I'm going to just jack up right here. Geek Warz t-shirt. You can't see the whole thing because I don't want to embarrass myself and get up and just trip or something stupid. But it's WARZ. So you can look that up on Facebook if you're inclined. You can look it up on Instagram as well. I'm not really doing anything on MySpace because that's dead. But I could be one of Tom's friends still, probably. But you can also check out my man, Max Prime.
Yeah.
You can plug yourself right here because I'm tired of talking.
Okay. All right. All right. So yeah, let's see. YouTube, find me at Max Prime Reviews. Instagram is the Story Arcz, just like the way it sounds, but it's dead with a Z. And yeah, that's where I'm at. That's where you can find me. I would say Twitter, but Twitter's a hostile war ground that I tend to drop on.
Somebody may be canceled at any moment.
I don't play around with that website. I stay quiet.
I dabble. I'm just saying. I use that to promote Instagram and Facebook, probably, but it's what it is. So, if you're down for any kind of geekery, as it were, again, you can check out Max Prime. That way? Yeah. I don't know. You just changed me up. There it is. There he is. You can check him out on YouTube, Max Prime Reviews. Check him out on Instagram with the Story Arcz, as you see the logo up there. And also, again, every once in a while, check in with your boy Rico, your chic of geek. Like I always tell people, at the end of the day, so let it be written, so let it be geek, because you could be that geek.